The live stream has just started, Chairman, as it's 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Right, good evening, fellow councillors, officers, members of the public, if we have any. Not that I can see everybody, but welcome to the April full council meeting, North Norfolk District Council. So we start with apologies for absence. Emma, I think we have 3, don't we?
I have apologies from Councillor Bevan Jones, Councillor Sarah Buttercover, Councillor Peter Fisher, Councillor Marion Millership and Councillor Emma Spagnola.
Right, slightly more than I thought. Okay, thank you. Right, second item on the agenda are the minutes of the last meeting, which is from page 1 till page 40, so they're quite substantial. If I can quickly go through them page by page, please. Page 1, anybody got any comments? Pages 2 and 3. Any comments, corrections? Everybody happy? Pages 4 and 5. Thank you. 6 and 7. That was the debate about various things, the budgets, etc. 8 and 9. 10, 11. 12, 13. 14, 15. 16, 17. And then I think we'll go from 18, 19, 20, 21. They're simply tables of numbers. The next substantive bit there would be page 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. And then there's the detail of various recorded votes. So everybody happy if I sign those as a true record of the previous meeting? Thank you. Items of urgent business, I have none listed. Declarations of interest from members. Do I have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Next item is item 5, Chairman's communications. Not a lot to say, except the last year, of course, has been very difficult to do a great deal, but what has been a success, in the beginning of this year, we had 3 virtual events called Cly Calling with guest speakers. And I'm very pleased to say that those 3 events have raised £2,275 towards the charity, which is quite remarkable. We had several hundred people at each event. That's really all I have to say. Obviously, at the next meeting, we will be presenting the charity with the total sum raised, which I'll hold in abeyance till then. Leaders' announcements. Councillor Seward, can I ask you to come in there?
I have no announcements, Chairman.
Thank you. Now, public questions and statements. We do have one public speaker, Katie Hart. Now, I'm going to ask Katie Hart if she would like to speak now or speak when the motion about which she wishes to, the one she wishes to address, is brought up later in the agenda. So Would you like to speak now, Katie Hart?
Yeah, no, it's okay if I speak now and then I can leave to go and sort my daughter's tea out, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, that's fine.
Okay, well, I just really wanted to raise the issue of domestic abuse and the lack of resources that we have within Sheringham. I don't wish to go into it too deeply, but I speak from experience. I was unable to access help, especially I want to circle it around the abuse side rather than the violence. There is lots of help and there's lots of charities out there that help people that are suffering domestic violence. But some of these charities probably unwillingly or unintentionally discriminate against people that have suffered the abuse psychologically or emotionally or through controlling abuse, which does have a detrimental effect on mental health. I would love actually for Sheringham to come up with some form of charity or some kind of help hub which would allow people from domestic abuse situations to access via Sheringham either anonymously, quietly, or however they like, so that they've got access to counsellors, they've got access to solicitors, so it helps them navigate social services, helps them into refuges. And I know we've got like the food banks and things like that. And also to help people to navigate through the NHS wellbeing service, which not a lot of people realise that they can self-refer to, and also people that are in those situations maybe don't feel confident to do it themselves, that need somebody to stand by them to walk them through these phases. I just think we could do more. My idea came because when I was going through things, so there is in Dereham, in the Breckland community, they have something called the Daisy programme. That is a fantastic programme. Now, if we could mirror something like that in Sheringham, I think it would help a lot of our residents that are going through similar kinds of things. So yeah, so that's really sort of like all I wanted to do. I wanted to try and set something up myself. But being a single parent and working full time, I'm finding it very, very hard at the moment to find the time to put all, because I'm on my own. I'm doing it alone actually, so it's a lot of work for one person to do. But I just wondered if the councils would be interested in helping to create such a help hub, so to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. People have listened, and I'm sure we would be interested in setting up something to help people. It's obviously a problem that through the periods of lockdown has got significantly worse. So yes, I'm sure we can look at doing something along those lines.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, item 8 is appointments to committees, subcommittees, working parties and outside bodies. Councillor Rest, I'm going to come to you first.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. We have a couple of changes that we'd like to make. Councillor Nigel Housden will be replaced on the Constitutional Working Party by Councillor Rest. Also, Councillor Housden is unable to continue with one of the outside bodies. I haven't got its full title, but I believe it's transport of some description. I will get back to Emma with the exact sort of point. I can only say that I haven't got a replacement at the moment, but I am confident that we may be able to resolve that problem very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rest. Councillor Cushing, have you got anything you'd like to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Seward?
I have nothing to announce, Chairman.
Thank you. So that takes us on then to item 9, which is portfolio reports in the order shown. So if I can go first, please, to Councillor Fitch-Tillis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. I'm happy to announce that our Bacton Walcott Sandscaping Scheme was awarded the Norfolk Construction Excellence Award only a couple of weeks ago. It's another award, and we're very pleased to receive that. I have some more good news, is that our 8 million, ours being Coastal Partnership East, £8 million bid for a 6-year programme to deliver coastal adaptation across 8 communities on the Norfolk and Suffolk coast has been successful. This will evidence coastal management well into the future. Third point, operationally, the Cromer 2 and Munsley Coast Protection Schemes are moving forward with the appointment of Mott MacDonald as consultants. Senior councillors, those who've been with me for quite some time, will recall that they worked with us in producing the Cromer to Winterton study some years ago. Nationally, I chair the local government coastal SIG working group on adaptation, with Karen Thomas, my lead officer, and Sharon Blease is the lead officer of the beach safety working group, again for the SIG. Finally, we are working with marsh insurers to try and find a way for properties at erosion risk to obtain insurance similar to those at risk from flooding. I chair this group, which covers the representatives from the whole of the UK. That's all I wish to add. I'm quite happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman, if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see Mr. Cushing's got his hand up. Councillor Cushing, hello.
Yes, Councillor Cushing.
Hello, well, congratulations on another award. That's good news indeed. Just following your report, there was an article in the North Norfolk News on the 16th of April about sand erosion on Backman Beach. I think it said metal steps and groins had been, that were submerged and now protruding. Now, the article made it clear this is part of the normal motion of a beach. And I think actually your update says similar. Just wonder if you could just give us some reassurance about this and also just explain how that's actually monitored on an ongoing basis.
Yes, of course. As you quite rightly put, sand is a moving thing. It is moved by the sea backwards, forwards, in and out, and it is behaving similar to expected. However, we are aware that there are certain things coming to the surface. It is regularly monitored, as you can see from the report, by either the coastal engineer Fiona and Brian or from Rob Goodliff. It's a huge amount of monitoring going on because it's first in the UK, but anything that actually appears that could produce a hazard obviously is marked as such with a buoy or a flag or something to bring people's attention to it. But you have to be aware that all the way along this coast, there are traditional sea defences reappearing. There is ordnance appearing. The lifeboats are going out quite often to remove bits of ordnance. I myself was actually on the Sea Calling lifeboat when it got called to remove a piece of ordnance from Horsey. So it is an area that has hazards. And one of the things that we are very conscious of, and I'm glad that Sharon Blease is leading on this, is beach safety. Because we are expecting, as you can see from a report later on this agenda, that we are going to get an enormous amount of visitors this year with staycation, many of which do not understand the coast, probably haven't been to it, think it's just like a nice warm swimming pool. So it's something that we are very, very well aware with, working very hard with Carl Reid in respect of that. But I can assure you we're aware, we're watching it, and we are marking it as and when required.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further questions for Councillor Fitztillett on the coast? No, thank you very much, Councillor Fitztillett. We'll now move on to health, wellbeing and culture. Councillor Gay.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. I will just draw your attention to a few of the things within this report. I'd like to tell you that we are on course for a summer opening for the reef. We're going to be expecting announcements about our blue and green flags quite soon. And you will have noticed in the report that 4 of our beaches will be receiving lifeguarding from this Saturday, which is actually 2 weeks early. So that should be very helpful for the people who are coming to visit us. In addition, I would like to mention our grants fund. You will have all received an email from Sharon Garth on April the 15th laying out the last awards, but you might like to know that in 2021, this council awarded roughly £106,000 to 22 organisations for the North Norfolk Sustainable Communities Fund. You may also perhaps remember that a social prescribing briefing, a seminar was requested at the last full council. That was fulfilled and done, and it was well attended and I think extremely informative. Apart from that, one of the things which you may not know about, it may be covered elsewhere in someone else's report, but the council has awarded a grant to North Norfolk Open Studios to allow an art trail at the beginning of June. So you're all urged to go along and visit your local artists. It's an extremely nice day out going to studios. I think everything is pretty clearly laid out. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gay. Do I have any members' questions, please? Yes, Councillor Fredericks.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. I'd just like to say thank you for putting the briefing on. It was really informative, and I hope that it gave members a sense of the hard work that the team do. And the pressures that they're under, and we really need to support them with resources and funding. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Don't think so. Nobody I can see anyway. No, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Councillor Gay. That takes us on to Councillor Greg Hayman, Housing and Benefits. Councillor Hayman.
Thank you. This is very much a sort of interim report. It's business as usual report with quite a lot of facts and figures on where we are and how we're delivering. But I do want to, particularly in view of the debate we have later on about the motion on abuse, and just draw your attention to the domestic abuse bill, which is shortly to be enacted, and the commitment that we have to work with the second tier authority, i.e. the county council, and we will have a representative on the steering group from NEC that looks to across the piece working to deliver changes and services for victims of domestic abuse. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Do I have any questions, members, please? Councillor Hayman? No, can't see anybody. Right, thank you, Councillor Hayman. That takes us on then to Councillor Kershaw, Economic Development. Councillor Kershaw.
Thank you, Chair. That my report's before you. I just thought I'd draw out an update of where we are with the grant situation. We have now, in the last year, distributed £118.5 million to 28,403 payments to businesses throughout North Norfolk District Council. And I have to say, yet again, I have to commend the team for their phenomenal performance and timely delivery of the funds. I can announce that we have appointed consultants for the North Walsham Town Centre Heritage Action Zone, who are now in the third meeting of planning. We're working with Norfolk County Council Highways to start working on the Lokes and the ways through to the town, and working with Historic England to develop the historical side. And the Cultural Committee has also met, which was a very interesting meeting, and that's everything is going to plan. With that, if I have nothing more to bring out, if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. I can see Councillor Mancini Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the Economic Development Portfolio holder, I'd like to join me in thanking central government for the 118 million plus paid to this council to support 28,000 businesses and residents since the start of the pandemic. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. Anybody else, please? No. Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. That takes us out on to Councillor Lloyd, Environment and Climate Change. Councillor Lloyd, please.
Thank you, Chair. Really, I'd just like to draw members' attention to the really very diverse workload that the environmental health team have carried out over the past period. The report speaks for itself. And this, of course, is on top of the support for the COVID support marshals that are working across the districts. We make good progress on the Climate Change Charter. This now has been through scrutiny. It now goes to Cabinet. Last Friday, we had an environmental forum online, and it was extremely successful. And we're around about 50 delegates, all stayed right to the end. Fabulous feedback from them, and this is a bit of a tester for us because we've never run such a large online forum before. It works really well. So I'd like to thank the climate change team for their efforts for running such a slick event. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see three people. First one is Councillor Penfold, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Just to echo Councillor Lloyd's comments there on the environmental forum, I attended that, and it was, I thought, engaging, thought-provoking, very well received by the participants there from multiple organisations. And what I thought particularly was encouraging for us is the way that we're working as a council across departments and teams to tackle the issue of climate change. So I thought that was really inspirational, actually. So I'd just like to pass my thanks on to the team who delivered that forum, and very much looking forward to the next one. And I would encourage all members to attend it if they can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Penfold. Now I have Councillor Toy, Councillor Mancini-Boyle and Councillor Dixon. I think in order they appeared. Councillor Toy, you're next. You're muted, sir.
It didn't come off as it should. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, actually, Councillor Penfold has said pretty much all that I wanted to say. You know, so I basically second everything he said. But also, additionally, you know, I've been out and about, and the Felbeck Trust, who we've awarded awards for their work in the environment. I met the chairman this morning when I was walking my dog, and he was full of praise for it as well. It's been well received and well produced, and yeah, congratulations to the team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just draw your attention to the mention of the noise abatement notices on a third of the way down page 62. I don't know whether my colleague in Holt would have a similar question, but in respect of Houghton, I have to say that both my colleague, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, and myself have only found out about this noise abatement notice in respect of Houghton by reading your report tonight. So I guess my question is twofold. Is this the way that local members are now finding out about the serving of noise abatement notices? And could a second part to that is what has happened to the local member protocol that should draw that to our attention, please?
Councillor Lloyd.
I think I got the gist of that question, although it was breaking up a little bit. Apologies, Councillor Dixon. No, it's not. I'll take your issue up with the officers. It's certainly our intention that officers should be alerting members to any activities that take place within their wards, and I apologise to Councillor Dixon for that oversight.
Councillor Mancini-Ball, you've already had one question, which strictly to the rules means that I ought to move on unless there is time at the end. So if you would bear with us, please, I will now move on to Councillor Seward.
Thank you, Chairman. The report's before you on finance and assets, and I'm willing to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Councillor Seward? No? Okay. Councillor Shires.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members. Well, the reports are before you. I just wanted to draw particular attention to page 68 and the customer service team, who have been a little bit above and beyond, I think, assisting the NHS with contacting patients to book appointments for vaccinations. This is something that's been ongoing for some months, but I just wanted to personally thank the team for their can-do attitude and for stepping up in that instance. And I'm willing to take any member questions.
Yes, I have several member questions. If I can start, please, with Councillor Vincent Fitzpatrick, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask a question rather than make a comment, which seems to be the current habit. I'd like to thank Councillor Shires for sharing her reports with you. My particular interest is in the organisational resources, and in particular the mention that the new app gets a question about the app. It's all kind of exec level stuff, so no great techie stuff here. Yeah, I'm interested in knowing what the use case of the app is. Is it transactional? Is it informational? Also interested in what's the anticipated uptake. Interested on the development costs, the ongoing running costs, how long the sort of whether the that there is a guarantee and a warranty in place. But I think very importantly, what's the benefit case? How does the council benefit from this app financially? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. There was a number of questions there, which I would like to answer, but I don't have the specific information. So I will get back to you on all of them, such as the development costs and the predicted update. Unfortunately, the business case, it's something that I inherited when I took my portfolio, but I'm more than willing to find out the exact predicted uptake and benefit and get back to you on that.
Okay, Councillor Fitzpatrick, does that answer your question?
Yeah, well,
thank you.
It gives an expectation of question being answered. So
yeah, I'm sure the information will be made available.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Housden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to ask Councillor Shires whether there's been any comments on the customer services and the telephone system. I have had a number of ward members contacting me to say they haven't been able to get through, in some instances waiting, once they've got through the sort of initial phone system, waiting 20 minutes and still the phones haven't been answered. So I just wondered if there's any issues with or problems with the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Houghton. Could you clarify if the initial phone call was answered by customer services and then passed on to another department, or was the issue with the...
No, it was just through the, the menu system and passed through.
Okay, and is there a specific department? Do you know?
This was both planning and licensing.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just making a note of that so I can chase that up. So when I've got a lovely spreadsheet in front of me, because I thought I might get some wonderful data questions. that doesn't initially look like it stacks up with the data on terms of call waiting, but if there are specific instances, I can get them investigated with specifics to planning and licensing.
Fine, okay, I'll go back to the people that have contacted me and we can pick it up from there.
Perfect, thank you.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. I now have Councillor Stanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. My question is, why does NMDC use paper payslips instead of digital ones? This is not environmentally friendly practice, which comes with additional cost of envelopes and labor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a fantastic question. And I'm sure my colleague, Councillor Lloyd, will join me in saying that we must do what we need to reduce the amount of paper we use. I will look into that. I'm not sure if that quite sits in my portfolio, but I'm sure I'll be able to find a question for you.
Yeah, it does. It does say in your report that IT is assisting HR, so I thought that would be relevant. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, I will find out and get back to you. But if you wouldn't mind, if I can work with Councillor Lloyd to see what else we can do with that, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Councillor Birch.
Hi. 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 Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Councillor Shires, I'm always very interested in websites, so I was very interested to read that the accessibility of our website at NNDC has improved. And I just wondered what, I know here you got further work to improve the rating further on accessibility. I just wondered what further ideas you were going to try and implement in the next 12 months.
That's a really good question. Thank you, Councillor Birch. Well, when we look at accessibility, it covers a wide range of things, so it will be an ongoing issue. So we have to look at the way we lay things out to make it as easy to navigate as possible. We have to look at the way that we enable text to be enlarged, because different people have different usage and different needs. Obviously, visibly impaired people will need to enlarge text. The other thing that we need to be really mindful of is when we're putting new stuff on the website, that it has to have a really thoughtful colour contrast, because a poor colour contrast won't help. The other point, I guess, would come down to keyboard navigation for people who can't use a mouse and such. So it really is an ongoing project to ensure that we stay accessible going forward. I know that the data for accessibility, I believe it was 1 in 4 councils weren't accessible, so I'm quite happy to report that we're almost in the top 30 now. If you would like a detailed plan of what our website improvement plans are, I'm very happy to find that for you.
Lovely. Thanks very much for your answer, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Toy, I'm afraid you've already had your question, so if time allows, I'll come back to you. But if we could now move on, please, to your portfolio, which is planning and enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Yeah, you'll see the main thrust of my report is, that there's been a huge increase in the number of applications through the planning department in all areas. And I even looked last night, this month already, we've had 169 validated and 225 decided. And I also went through all of those 220 other applications last night, and actually, the planning department should be congratulated, because over 60% of them are being done within the 8 weeks, and most are being approved. So there's some excellent performance coming out there. So you have my report in front of you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Councillor Toy? Yes, I have one, which is Councillor Tom Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thanks for the report. Just one thing on digital transformation. Obviously, system glitches occurring, but it says in your report that the majority have been resolved, and it's believed people are getting correct notification. Certainly 2 of my parishes have been in touch, but not getting notifications of planning applications, and in one case the period's been extended. Is it possible to look at that and to find out actually if that's something that's occurring more than we might think? Because obviously if people don't know they should be getting a planning application, they won't know whether they've missed it or not unless they've put up a notification. So I'm grateful if that be looked at, and I can give you the details of the specific parishes if you want. Thanks.
Yeah, Councillor Fitzpatrick, thank you for the question. And yes, I'd be delighted to take that forward because we do need to know if there are any gaps in the system that aren't quite right yet. So thank you for that. And I look forward to getting the specific information from you.
Thank you. Right, we do have a couple of minutes, so I'd like to go back to Councillor Mancini-Boyle, who I think was about to ask a question of Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Mancini-Boyle, if you could be brief, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I appreciate you letting me ask a question. Councillor Lloyd, would the environmental portfolio holder please confirm to this council the targets that they have set to achieve are commitments as stated in the Environmental Charter, and how these will be measured and reported back to all members, and how frequently this will be planned in? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Mancini-Boyle. I'm a little bit confused because we report regularly back to scrutiny and certainly through Cabinet on our progress against not only the environmental health, but the whole corporate plan. So is there anything in particular? Because you're getting these every kind of 3 months, I think, updates.
Yeah, yes, we do. It's pretty much because obviously we now have this climate crisis. I just want us to know how diverse we are being with our environmental strategy with regard recycling and that type of things. We need to get them reduced. Have you got any targets for us in the short or the medium term that we can look to instead of just a report every 3 months? And also your aspirations. What are you looking to do? Is really the question I'm asking. Thank you.
That's a big question. I don't know whether we've got enough time, but look, when the Charter goes through Cabinet, the next stage after that is to set a full strategy to carbon neutrality by 2030, and there'll be a sort of roadmap, a glide path, if you like, low-hanging fruits first, and then we'll work on it like that. In terms of recycling is a movable feast, because what we saw during certainly the start of the COVID lockdown were massive changes in the quantities of different waste streams, and to set targets is quite difficult for us. However, I can say to you that I think there's room for improvement on recycling. My longer term aspirations would be to introduce food waste, but the costs of that are exorbitant in purchasing a bin for every person every resident. It's around about £600,000, which is a lot of money. That will make a huge dent in our recycling figures. There's no doubt about that. But if you could bear with me until we get the roadmap sorted out after the Charter's approved, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, I'm on it, and I share your aspirations in this regard, in actual fact. So, and I also think that having targets is something that it's tangible and people can see. And yeah, you can bear with us.
We need to leave it now. We're running out of time, but I think, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, the time will come soon when you'll get most of that information, if not all. Thank you. Now, I had Councillor Toy looking to ask a question of Councillor Shires. Is that still the case, Councillor Toy?
If we have the time, Mr. Chairman, if not,
If
obviously
you're very brief, please.
Yeah, it was just about car parking. We talked previously about boosting people buying season tickets for local people, especially with the fact that we've got visitors coming. So I just wondered how the uptake had gone on local people buying seasons tickets that we were promoting to save them money to make parking better for them.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good job I got my data spreadsheet. So when we look at the last financial year, we can see that there's been an increase of just short of about 620 extra, I would say, 620 extra season tickets we've sold in this financial year to date, and I got this data about a week ago. We've seen a huge shift from face-to-face transactions, which were 51% of our sales, to now moving to almost 67%, and now moving towards digital, so buying them online. Which is really helpful. We have seen a rise in people who have gone over the phone to buy their parking permit. So I would guess that some people who perhaps would prefer face-to-face have moved to the phone. But we have seen an increase, which I believe can only be a positive outcome for our residents if they're saving money on parking.
I would agree.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Are you happy, Councillor Toy?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay, so if we can now please move on to item 10, which is additional restrictions grant, and that's going to be presented by Councillor Kershaw, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. This paper I put before you tonight as a recommendation and an explanatory paper due to the fact that the government changed the rules on ARG grants, which were originally going to be paid out until March 22nd, March 2022, I beg your pardon. The revision in the Chancellor's budget changed the rules that all grants had to be defrayed, not allocated by the end of June this year, in order for the council to be able to apply for the top-up grants, which is worth £760,000 to the council. Therefore, we've had to act quickly to change the way we had proposed to allocate grants. And this paper is before you for transparency. We could have done this under delegated powers, but I thought it was wise that everyone knew exactly what was going on and the reasons behind it. And I recommend it. I recommend the paper to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kershaw. Now, do I have members' questions, please? Anybody want to pick this one up? No, so we can see the recommendations, which are that full council note content of the report, and that we establish the necessary terms and processes and develop a programme of business support. So not necessary to have a vote. It is simply that council notes that. Everybody happy? Thank you. So on to item 11. Preparations for managing anticipated increased visitor numbers, which I'm sure all of us have already started to see. So can I hand this over, please, to Councillor Kershaw and our Chief Executive, Steve Blatch.
I think Steve's going to lead on this one.
Is he? Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This report outlines what we anticipate will be a very busy summer because of the lifting of the COVID restrictions and the uncertainty of being able to travel abroad, such that most coastal parts of the country are expecting a very large influx of additional visitors this summer, both staycation holiday makers and day trippers who we believe will be prepared to travel further to enjoy days out when the weather is good. Obviously, we want to ensure that everybody that visits the district has a positive experience as possible. Our coastal towns particularly and settlements do become congested and very busy at peak times, but we think there will be even more pressure placed on those communities this summer. And so we are looking at how we make maximum opportunity to provide car parking close to the beach, town centres and attractions as possible. That is quite a challenge in our coastal communities, and that we don't have very much surplus or vacant land, so we can only use the facilities that we have, and the ability to extend those is limited. So in Cromer, we're proposing additional parking signage on the approach roads into town to encourage people, long stay visitors particularly, to make use of the Runton Road car park. There isn't going to be a Cromer Carnival this summer because of the uncertainties around COVID, so we will be able to make additional use of the carnival field, and we are also making provision for additional pay and display machines to be provided in that car park to limit the queues. And on a weekend and bank holiday, we're proposing to open the District Council's car park here at the council offices on Holt Road in Cromer. We recognise that it's a little way out of town, but people, we believe, will be prepared to use the facility and walk into town. That would similarly be on a pay and display basis. In Sheringham, it's considered there are very limited opportunities to expand parking within the town. We have made inquiries of the school sites, both in Cromer and in Sheringham, but the high schools do have caravan rallies or seasonal occupancy during the 6-week summer holidays, such that isn't a reliable source or guaranteed source of additional capacity. So we are looking at a park and ride option to serve Sheringham during the peak summer weeks. There's also, because of the restrictions on indoor eating, which we do hope will be lifted over the summer, but in terms of additional people, we think there will be large numbers of people taking picnics and takeaway food, and we are looking at whether we can increase the local offer in Cromer and Sheringham to meet that demand, particularly to manage queues on narrow pavements and to provide additional eating opportunities outdoors. And that will need to be serviced by the provision of additional litter bins, additional street and beach cleansing, and cleansing of related public toilets in terms of additional use. We are working with our Visit North Norfolk partner and with the comms team to encourage people to explore less congested parts of the district. We are very fortunate in having very attractive landscape and spaces away from the coast inland as well, that people can enjoy picnics, less visited places, such that people might want to explore those for a day out in less congested areas. And finally, we're looking at provision of composting toilet at Weybourne Car Park, where there is increased numbers of visitors in recent years. So the paper is presented for you for your information. It is to demonstrate that we're giving very active consideration to pre-planning for a busy summer, and we hope that you're reassured by the steps that officers are taking in this regard. But I'm happy to take any questions or receive members' comments if they have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blatch. Now, do I have? Yes, I have. Councillor John Rest, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point of clarification, if I may. On page 81, the recommendations, the fourth one, it says exploring the provision of a food court area from which to serve takeaway food, street food by local businesses from the vacant former tennis court. Can we just clarify, is this meaning that these are existing businesses within the area that will have a satellite up there? Are we allowing other traders who don't normally trade to come in for that period of time? Are they all going to be registered with NNDC? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rest. Those are the issues that the team are exploring at the present time. The view initially is that we should provide those opportunities for businesses that already have a presence in Cromer, particularly cafe businesses that might want to offer the potential for more takeaway or eat out type provision. The conversations are taking place initially with businesses in the town, and it would be to increase those opportunities for trade rather than introduce additional competition. And yes, it would be businesses that are registered with the authority in terms of food hygiene and commercial licences.
Thank you, Mr. Blatch. I have Councillor Withington next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. And Mr. Blatch, it's a thank you really, because I understand the decals etc. are going to be going down in Sheringham shortly, hopefully after May the 4th, and it's just to express our appreciation from the town and how much that's appreciated. So thank you very much. And I know if a park and ride can be forthcoming for sharing, it would be very much welcomed, as we do have, in comparison to Cromer, we have 1/3 of the number of car parking spaces available. So it is very much a priority for the town, I think, with the hordes that we had last year, planning to be even larger this year. So that's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Withington. Now I have Councillor Hayman.
Hello. Thanks for your report, Steve, and the updates. I just wondered whether, and apologies if I've missed this anywhere, whether the former playgroup building in North Lodge Park could be brought into some form of temporary use if we're looking at local businesses to bring them into the park on the tennis court site, whether we could do something with that area. It's looking at a terrible eyesore at the moment, as it's unoccupied, and with the sort of pressure on businesses locally, somebody might be happy to take that on, even as a pop-up, to get it into use and to stop the eyesore element of it. Even if it just had art or something in the window or in the ground, so that but at the moment it's looking a mess, but it's a wasted opportunity, it's a wasted resource. It could be put to good use for local businesses to help them in this busy time.
Thank you, Councillor Hayman. I understand that the estates team are looking at options for that site moving forward. That's under active consideration at the present time.
Thank you. Now I have Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Steve, you will recall that our group raised, myself and Nigel Dixon for Hopton raised this very point at our group meeting, and obviously very pleased to see some of the forward actions and thoughts and programs that have been put in. But since then, I was just thinking, has any provision been made for possible further increase in traffic in car boots, of which we have a fair splattering around the county, especially in our area? And secondly, also talking of cafeteria type arrangements, the McDonald's in Cromer, because of when it was opened the first day, the traffic was absolutely abysmal. And I happen to know that just recently, some of the cardboard packaging has turned up in North Walsham and in Holt. So I just wondered whether there's any thought in there for those possible bugbears in the future in those two areas. Thank you.
The proposals don't consider car boot sales or those sort of markets, although the COVID restrictions being relaxed by government do provide additional opportunities for outdoor markets and events of that nature. And we will obviously monitor those in terms of our public health and safety, corporate health and safety responsibilities. In terms of the issues with traffic at the new McDonald's, I do think that was an issue that was in the first couple of days of trading. I can't say that it wouldn't be repeated in the summer, but it's not something that I think is a regular issue now that the facility's been open for some time. The issues of littering are the subject of ongoing conversations with the operator of that facility.
Thank you. Now I did have Councillor Tim Adams, but I think his hand has disappeared. Tim, are you there?
It's okay. I was just going to inform the meeting on Greg's question. I do believe the County Council are working with a prospective operator for what it was previously known as CV Playgroup, whether it's known as CView in future, I don't know. But they're currently working with that person. We do expect it to be reopened as a preschool nursery. And there have been continued discussions with the operator of McDonald's, with this possibility in future, say, outside of summer as well, that we might have some traffic issues, and we can seek to work with them locally to mitigate against those. So it's something that is still under discussion as and when it needs to be.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Now I have Councillor Penfold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Steve, for the update and all the hard work you're doing to make the district safe, yet still welcoming, of course, for visitors and all of us who live here in the summer. Just to support your point on promoting less busy parts of the district, we've got many hidden gems, many of which are undiscovered. So I think that's a really important point. I certainly took your advice last year, Steve, and visited Warham Iron Age Fort, which was fantastic, and I would recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else? Don't think so. So Council is being asked to note the report and the actions listed. So thank you very much. That takes us through then to item 12, which is senior management restructuring. And I think Councillor Rest, do you want to say something about this?
Yes, thank you, Chairman, I will. Members, as members will be aware, there remains a vacant post of Director of Place and Climate Change. The authority has worked with a Society of Local Authority Chief Executives officers, known as SOLAS, to recruit into this important role. SOLAS have provided a recruitment process with the necessary rigour required to source the best possible person. Last Thursday, a final face-to-face interviews took place in the council chambers with 2 candidates, along with the EAC and the chief executive. After the final interview, the EAC and the chief executive reviewed both candidates, interview responses and their presentations. I am pleased to be able to confirm that the panel unanimously recommends to full council that one of the final 2 candidates for the Director of Place and Climate Change be appointed. This candidate has made a formal offer to join the authority. We are currently awaiting their written acceptance of the offer, when I am able to share more details of the successful applicant. We will of course do so, but I'm unable to do so currently as we have to respect the privacy of that person. So it's good news. It's the whole of the EAC were very complimentary about both candidates, but one in particular was a unanimous decision. I'm not sure, do we need a proposer and a seconder for this?
I think it would be best if we receive the person's formal acceptance, and then we can bring a report back that formally confirms confirms their appointment and acceptance in due course.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds eminently sensible. Does anybody wish to comment? No, thank you very much indeed. Recommendations from Cabinet, I have none. Recommendations from overview and scrutiny, I don't believe there are any, but Councillor Dixon, would you like to comment at all?
Yes, I will just confirm, Mr. Chairman, that there are no recommendations to bring to full council tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I have no questions received from members, and I have no opposition business. So that takes us on then to item 17, which is the first notice of motion on the Environment Bill, which has been proposed by Councillor Lloyd and seconded by Councillor Seawood. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 3 important government bills relating to climate change making their way through Parliament at the moment. Each will provide different tools to reduce our carbon footprint. The 3 bills are the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, the Local Energy Bill and the Environmental Bill. Whilst I'm in support of all three of these bills, that this motion refers specifically to the environmental bill. It was first introduced to Parliament in October 2019 and was reintroduced in January 2020 and is now stalled awaiting scheduling. In the context of a climate emergency, this is disappointing. The bill promises to put the environment at the centre of all government policy making, and in so doing aims to create a greener and cleaner country. It is a 25-year plan and looks well into the long term. The bill seeks to set binding targets for a range of important environmental considerations, including air quality, waste reduction targets, biodiversity improvements on land and at sea, and also looks to reduce the UK's resource use. For information, the UK's materials footprint or resource use grew by 16% between 2001 and 2017. This doesn't include fossil fuels. The bill contains some important aspects that have the potential to help this council improve its waste management, the biodiversity across the district, and the overall health of our residents. The motion expresses our support for the bill, requests adequate resources for councils to help implement it, and for NDC to write to George Eustace MP, the Environment Secretary, asking him to reintroduce the bill as soon as possible. The motion also calls for a letter to our two North Norfolk MPs, asking them to take a leading role in the bill and to champion it in its passage through Parliament into law. I would urge all members to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Seward, do you want to say anything now or reserve your right later?
I'll reserve my right, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, can we open this for debate? Have I got any comments, please? I have one hand up, Councillor Housden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just take Councillor Lloyd down to basically paragraph 6? I know the first line is just a single line. Councils have an important role to play in tackling climate change. They can act as leaders and role models for others to follow. NNDC is committed to reaching net zero carbon by 2030. I don't want to play semantics. Is this NNDC as a council in its own right, or is this NNDC as the whole district? Thank you.
Thank you for that. It's NNDC as a council, but you were at scrutiny the other day and you would have noticed there were 3 pillars to our charter, one of which pledges for this council to become net carbon zero council by 2030. The other 2 pillars are all about reaching out to educate our residents as best we possibly can, and to help them with their own carbon budgets too, which is a significant part of this work. But obviously we can't make pledges for other people that we don't have control of. We can only make our carbon pledge for what we actually have responsibility for, which is this council, its contractors and its assets. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I am fully in support of this, but I do think that we should specify in that motion, because it's ambiguous the way it's written at the moment.
So are you proposing an amendment? If so, what would you like to see?
Its own NNDC is committed to reaching net zero carbon by 2030.
In its own right?
In its own right, please.
Okay. Now I have 2 other speakers. Councillor Cushing first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say this whole motion is nonsense. The environmental bill has been delayed due to the pandemic, which has just simply left too little time left in this parliamentary session to adequately scrutinise it. And ministers have absolutely confirmed that they're committed to this legislation. The Prime Minister himself has actually said of the bill, it's the huge star of the government's registered programme, a lodestar by which will guide our country towards a cleaner and greener future. The Environment Minister, Rebecca Powell, has told the Commons that the bill will return early in the next parliamentary second session and will become law by the autumn. She also added, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just quote, the necessary changes we've had to make to our procedures in order to keep members, the public, and of course staff safe, have put extraordinary pressure on the parliamentary timetable. And I want to assure all members that the government remains committed to getting the environmental bill onto the statute book as soon as we can. The bill has been carried into the next parliamentary session, where it will complete the report stage and head over to the House of Lords for full scrutiny. The government has said the carrying over the bill does not hold back any of the government's environmental ambition, and we're continuing at pace our plans linked to the bill. I just think, as Councillor Lloyd's raised, I think it's an opportunity here to actually scrutinise and to mention what this government is doing with regards to climate change and look at the recent announcements that have been made. On Tuesday, the 20th of April, new target in law to slash emissions by 75% by 2035. The UK government set into law the world's most ambitious climate change target, cutting emissions by 75% by 2035 compared to 1990 levels. For the first time, the UK's sixth carbon budget will incorporate the UK's share of international aviation and shipping emissions. This would bring the UK more than 3/4 of the way to net zero by 2050. Alex Sharma, who's the president designate for COP26, and that's the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference, has said this is a hugely positive step forward for the UK to set the gold standards for ambitious Paris-aligned action. We must set gold standards for all, we must collectively keep 1.5 degrees of warming in reach. And the next decade is the most critical period for us to change the perilous course that we're currently on. So that's one announcement. On the 17th of April, we had the Industrial Decarbonisation Strategy. This is a strategy which sets out how the industry can decarbonise in line with net zero while remaining competitive and without pushing emissions abroad. An ambitious blueprint for the world's first low-carbon industrial sector, slashing emissions by 2/3 in just 15 years, as well over £1 billion of government funding to cut emissions from industry, schools and hospitals. Published on the 24th of March, we had the North Sea Transition Deal, sector deal between government and offshore oil and gas industry. The UK is the first G7 country to agree a landmark North Sea transition deal to support the oil and gas industry's transition to a clean, green energy while supporting 40,000 jobs. Through the deal, the sector has committed to cut emissions by 50% by 2030, while the government sector and trade unions work together over the decade and beyond to deliver skills, innovation, and new infrastructure required to decarbonise North Sea production. We had a further announcement on the 16th of March, which is a new inquiry to examine the UK's strategy for meeting the 2050 net zero target at local level. So this is launched by the Housing, Communities and Local Government Committee. The inquiry will examine the government's proposals for establishing planning guidelines and building regulations to reduce household emissions. Part of this will examine the current emphasis on heat pumps as a long-term solution to increase energy and ask if there are any more other viable options. And the committee will also investigate what other non-domestic measures local government can take to contribute to the UK's emissions and reduction targets. And indeed, the Treasury will also publish net zero review in coming months. I have to say, I would have thought, Mr. Chairman, that looking at that incredible planned proposal of legislation that Councillor Lloyd and the Liberal Democrat group would be extremely happy indeed. But no, we have the party of protest that can't resist having a whinge. And what I find even more galling about this is the fact that it's due to the pandemic. At the last cabinet I attended, we were told that the corporate plan was behind because of the impact that the pandemic had had on the work it needs to do. So it's okay for this administration to be behind with some of this legislation, but clearly not the government, even though it has committed to get this into law by the autumn. And it was also interesting, I was watching Prime Minister's Question Time today because our MP, Duncan Baker, was asking a superb question of the Prime Minister about the Post Office scandal in terms of accounts. And actually in that, we had a rare sighting of a Liberal Democrat MP asking the Prime Minister a question, also happened to be about climate change. And actually, she had the decency to actually congratulate the Prime Minister on the international reduction in terms of aviation and shipping emissions. I have to say, I mean, I do know, obviously, both are MPs well. I do know conversations with them. Both of them are fully committed indeed to all the environmental legislation that the government proposes, and they certainly don't need any encouragement from this council in order to do their duty in that regard. Overall, as I said, this is just complete nonsense. It's trying to grab headlines. As a consequence, our group are going to abstain on it. Thank you.
I think the point is made, Councillor Cushing. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to say, it does gall me sometimes, and Councillor Cushing has sort of come a bit on that. What goes on in Westminster serves the nation, doesn't serve us. And I do happen to know that when the government puts a bill in, they don't get any congratulations from the Liberal group up here, even though it might be something that they aspire to. And I mean, I've got to support Christopher Cushing on this one because the government has worked extremely hard. COVID has hit us all, but they've still stayed determined to come into line with far-seeing proposals which are going to affect us all. And obviously we're also now talking about the mass electrification of cars. So therefore I do think that the government, if you're going to bring them into our conversations, when they put a bill through that does come in line or in thought with what your group wants, Mr. Chairman, the Liberal groups, the government should get congratulated for it, not pilloried for it. Thank you.
Yes, I think that works all ways round, Councillor Pearce. I agree with you. Right, Councillor Shires, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The penultimate paragraph, NNDC will write to George Eustace MP to express our support for the bill. I don't think that's nonsense. I think that's us acknowledging that we wish to support the bill. And I can see my colleagues nodding along with that. So I would just like to say that it is not nonsense that we wish to support the bill.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. Councillor Toy.
Yeah, just very much the same. This is not critical of the government. No one has said what they've, objected to what they've brought in. This is just saying we would like you to bring it back because we want to support it. We want to go forward with it. And we want to be assured that the right pieces will be put in place for us to work with the government to deliver those things.
Thank you, Councillor Toy. Now, do I have anybody else? Right, if I could go please to Councillor Lloyd and Councillor Seward and ask if the amendment that was proposed by Councillor Housden, that is to say that what the council does in its own right, is acceptable to them as an amendment.
Yes,
Thank you,
Chair.
Chair. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Lloyd,
I was just going to say that it mentions NNDC, Norfolk District Council. That's fairly clear to me, but I'm happy to include the amendment if that makes him happy.
Okay, and Councillor Seward?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Right, in which case that amendment can become part of the substantive part that we vote on. We don't have to have a separate vote. Now, do I have anybody else before we go to the vote to support this motion or not?
Mr. Chairman, do I have the right to respond?
You do have the right, of course, yes.
Well, look, what this is a modest motion. It actually says very clearly that this council supports the bill. What its concern is about is how it's being deferred. And look, Parliament, in my view, of watching it over the years, is an archaic institution. I'm pleased that Councillor Cushing watches Prime Minister's Question Time. I regard it as just a form of abuse between politicians a lot of the time, which adds nothing to debate. If we're going to be serious about climate change, then you actually prioritise it. And one of the difficulties we have is that there's fine talk, fine promises, more inquiries, setting targets. What you actually have to have is a programme of delivery which actually achieves and gets you there. And this is what this bill enables us to do, so we can get on and do the work we want to do in North Norfolk. Now, one of the things this bill offers us is more powers and help to deal with flood protection. Look, after what we've been through this winter, we can't hang around and wait for more time to deal with flood protection. We need the powers and we need them now, and not to be waiting until the September, October or November, and eventually when they get round to it. Governments, if they want to, and if they're determined to do something, in spite of the pandemic, can find time and can find priorities. It doesn't have to be pushed back. And that's all that this particular motion says. And all it politely says, please, Minister, please get on and urge your colleagues to actually get this through Parliament. And we ask our two MPs to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seward. So we're voting for three things here. North Norfolk calls on the government to reintroduce the bill as soon as possible, that we write to George Eustace MP to express our support, and that we write to our two Norfolk MPs to urge them to support this in every way. The only amendment is on the paragraph where it refers to the District Council pledging to reach net zero by 2030, and the amendment was in its own right to ensure that that can't be misinterpreted. So can I, just looking, there's a chat line here, just give me a second.
Have a poll for this, Chairman, if you want Matt to launch the poll so members can take the vote now.
Yes, please, Emma. So if we can then go to the vote by poll.
Okay, I'll just ask that everyone's had a chance to vote.
No, I haven't, Matt. I can't get my screen to function.
Oh, that's, I think Emma's made you co-host, so I'll just, I don't have the power to un-co-host you. Emma, if you're able to do that, then Clive might be able to. Okay, has that come up for you now, Clive?
Nope.
We'll add you on, Clive. I have removed that, but we will add you on to the overall vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 23 in favour and 7 abstentions with none against. Clive, obviously, your vote's still to come.
Okay, well, I'm voting for. So.
Okay, so that's 24 in favour and 7 abstentions.
Thank you. That takes us on then to the second of the motions, which is in respect of domestic abuse, which I'm sure we all think is a pretty disgraceful circumstance. The proposer is Councillor Fredericks and the seconder is Councillor Withington. So if I can go to you two.
Mr. Chairman, can I just intervene a minute? I went out of the meeting, but I would have voted in favour of the motion. Perhaps the sound of me speaking switched me off, I don't know, but anyway.
Okay, well, it was 24 for and 7 abstentions. So with your vote for, it would be 25 for with 7 abstentions.
Thank you.
Okay. So With this domestic abuse item, we had a public speaker, which we all heard, Katie Hart, who decided she wanted to speak at the beginning. So that's completed that. If I can now go over, please, to Councillor Fredericks and Councillor Withington.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm really indebted actually to Katie for being here and speaking up. And she's quite right. Abuse covers emotional abuse. It covers sexual abuse. It covers financial abuse, elderly abuse, disabled abuse. So this hopes to answer some of your questions, Katie, and also enlist your help if possible. Over the last year, Norfolk Police have reported an increase of 20% in domestic abuse in Norfolk. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 8 men have reported being a victim of domestic abuse. Nationally, this is 1 in 3 women. The figures are coming from Norfolk County Council. This is an epidemic with only a 5% positive outcome of the 54 cases reaching prosecution by the CPS. These are the cases we know about. There are many more hidden away. Children are often witnesses, and there are 692 children in Norfolk per day being assessed as being at risk of domestic abuse. Again, Norfolk County Council figures. This is now an incredibly urgent issue which needs all of our collective thinking on how to prevent acts of abuse, finds ways to support and enable survivors to flee from their situations, and then ongoing support to continue to keep safe. Often the victim stays or returns because there is no support available. And also, they don't know what's available. At present, the system isn't coping with the numbers, and we simply don't have the mechanism to help victims when they need it most. Survivors need help at the point of escape, not to jump off a cliff with no one to catch them. Recently, I hid a family in a chalet, and without the excellent work of our housing team, the next place would have been a caravan. Help is usually available in Greater Norwich. However, there is very little here in North Norfolk. We welcome the upcoming domestic abuse bill from Parliament. We really do, because it's a step in the right direction. We can put steps in place to implement this legislation with the help of the following resolutions. In May 2021, NNDC will establish and host a forum and invite the police, Norfolk County Council, our experienced officers, agencies, charities and survivors to work together to find opportunities to provide support where there are currently gaps in services. Also to pull together our working partnerships. Working together with the NNDC, Norfolk County Council, the forum will develop an action plan to improve support to those who are living with DA, and particularly to those who have or want to escape away from their situation. Number 2, all staff and members to be offered a short training course from Norfolk County Council, which will raise awareness of domestic abuse and address the issues. We are a customer-facing council and our officers are doing brilliant work with our residents. I believe that this will increase our empathy and show those who are suffering that we are listening and that we do care. Number 3, domestic abuse champions, 1 officer, 1 member, probably the portfolio holder, to be trained and to be responsible for the following departments: customer services, housing, revenue and benefits, social prescribing, environmental health, All of these departments are very customer focused and they interact with our residents on a daily basis. So they need to know the signs and how to cope with that. As members, we are responsible for representing the needs of all of our residents. Those living with domestic abuse are part of the hidden community. It is vital that we have a support network in place to enable them to come forward and empower them to live in safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fredericks. Councillor Withington, would you like to speak now, or would you like to reserve your right to speak at the end?
I'll reserve my right to speak at the end, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Withington. Can I open this up to debate now then, please, members? Councillor Shires, I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Fredericks and Councillor Withington, for bringing this motion. But I think a big thanks has to go to Katie. It takes a lot of courage, not only to step out of the door and start your life again, but to stand in front of a group of potential strangers with all the vulnerability and say, look, we can do better. So thank you, Katie. We've seen, I don't know whether or not it's because throughout the pandemic, people are more likely to not want to stay in their situation and are desperate to leave. Or if we've just made some really good inroads with trust in our communities. But we have had, I say we, I look to Councillor Fredericks mostly because we tend to overlap a little bit. But over the last year, we have seen a real increase of I can only speak for the women that I've worked with. I can't speak to any gentlemen because I know it's, you know, it's not gender specific, who walk out of their home, you know, sometimes with young children, sometimes with a carrier bag, sometimes with just sheer determination that life can be better. And they walk out wanting to start a life that's safe and secure and happy and peaceful. And there's nothing. There are charities that exist but don't support North Norfolk. Housing is not easy to get into, and often these vulnerable people end up in emergency accommodation. If they're lucky, they can get instant emergency accommodation. If not, there's a waiting game. This emergency accommodation takes them away from their families. It takes children away from their schools. It takes people out of the communities that are there to support them. And we, unfortunately, don't have a system which supports the survivor. It tends to lead towards the perpetrator not having to give up much of their own life. So I really welcome that we can come together as existing groups and organisations to say, look, we can do better, because we can do better. I just want to thank you to all the community members who stepped up with furniture, you know, extra food, extra support, picking furniture up and moving furniture around for people. When we've said help, we need to get people furnished. And I just want to thank a particular lady who reached out to me, I think it will be May time now, to help her daughter. And it was a bit of a struggle, and we got there in the end, but we wouldn't have got there without the care of our housing team, without, you know, people stepping up and bringing vans, without the additional support. People who escape domestic abuse and violence don't escape with their life intact. They escape with barely anything. Many are having to give up jobs to keep safe. So we need to make sure that whatever support we provide to survivors encompasses everything that they've lost in their life. You know, it's mental health, it's support getting work, it's support with childcare, it's support getting homed. You know, it's making sure that we're not ripping people out of a community because there just aren't the resources to keep them where they need to be. So again, thank you both Councillor Fredericks and Councillor Withington, and again thank you Katie for your bravery today.
Thank you, Councillor Shires. I have Councillor Toy next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you to all that's been said here today. And Katie, this is real. It's happening. I have men that, by building relationships with the communities, have learnt to trust us, who are now confiding in me. And it is a real issue, and we do need to address it, and we need to face up to it. And I think that's all I'd like to say at this time. All the other things that have been mentioned about taking them from their community and all the worries and concerns are the same, male or female. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Toy. I now have Councillor Hayman.
Thank you. Just like to say a few words, but first of all, I'd like to just note the incredible bravery and dignity of Katie and my colleagues who've already made comments this evening. It takes an awful amount of bravery to be able to comment on the experiences that you've suffered yourself or have witnessed. And I applaud them for coming forward and putting this motion before us. I think it's probably fair to say on those statistics that all of us here will know someone who has been a victim of domestic abuse in some way, shape or form, whether it's physical violence, whether it's coercive control or the other forms of abuses that can happen. I also think, and the statistics bear this out, that knowing that the vast majority of these victims are women, that this is a men's problem. Men are the problem when it comes to this, and we need to think about long-term how we educate, how we socialize, and how we encourage men to take a more responsible role and acknowledge that we have feelings in the way that we regard masculinity and all that goes with that in some forms that lead men to exert violence in a variety of forms against women in their lives. And those women will be our mothers, our wives, our sisters, our nieces, our daughters. It's those that we are looking out for. It's everyone. It's our problem, but I think it's men's problem, and we need to do more as men to come forward and support this. And the situation that we're in at the moment with COVID and lockdown has seen a massive increase in domestic abuse. And I had to take in one of my family members last year in the middle of the COVID pandemic who had to flee coercive control and abuse that they were suffering in their domestic situation. These things are very real and we need to act now. And I applaud those colleagues who brought this motion before us and urge your support.
Thank you, Councillor Hayman. I now have Councillor Paul Heinrich, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I would second everything that's been said so far. I think we do need to recognise that the scale of this issue, and it's often only the tip of the iceberg that gets reported to the police. I look at the crime stats for North Walsham for last month. Of 54%, that's 13 of the incidents reported involved domestic incidents. And I'm sure that's only the tip of the iceberg. Those are simply the ones that get noisy enough and disruptive enough to neighbours for the police to be called. This is a considerable problem. And I've had a relative who was suffering from in a coercive relationship. We had to rescue her. This is happening everywhere. We have to provide some support, and there is so little. In the case I mentioned, it was in another part of the country, and the police, they were very supportive. They made it a priority at the time. Whether that's happening now, I don't know. There's also the other lack of support that very often people are now dependent on charity for the support. It's not coming from authorities in any form, and it just seems to be being ignored too much by government, and anything we can do has to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heinrich. Councillor Kershaw next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to revisit all the comments that have been made so far, but I would like to say how touched I was when we recently had a training session on social prescribing and the value that that brings to this sort of situation, not just identifying the problem, but actually early intervention, leading people to a situation where they feel valued, they're supported, reintroduced into society, and the outcomes are phenomenal. And that team in our council works so hard. You know, we need to resource more of this sort of intervention because it's crucial for the welfare of the people, the victims. You know, it rebuilds their lives, and I think that's crucial. And finally, if I could, Chair, could I request a recorded vote on this motion, please?
Yes, of course. Do I have anybody else? Councillor Withington can come in a minute, but I'd like to comment in the sense that it is not a gender-specific problem. The closest I've ever been to a case of domestic abuse was a man who was abused by his wife over a period of time and ended up being subject to GBH. She went to prison. But it was a few years ago in a time when the police took no notice, but it is not gender specific. Of course, the majority may well be women who are taken advantage of, but it's a sad reflection on society that basically it means that people are not respecting the rights of others. And that is a sad reflection on all of us. Right, Councillor Withington.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to everyone who's spoken tonight in support of this motion. Domestic abuse, including coercion and control and violence, is a hidden epidemic. As Councillor Heinrich referred, month on month, it is one of the highest crimes reported on our monthly statistics. This isn't new, however, it was always there. It was all across our district. But as a society, we've allowed it to continue and not put the support in place. Support that is there and could end this cycle of family violence. If you look at the statistics, which when Councillor Fredericks referred to, when she said it's 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience domestic abuse or violence in their lifetime. I've just quickly totted up looking at the men and women on this call tonight. In reality, that means 4 of the women on this call and 4 of the men are likely to experience domestic abuse or domestic violence in their lifetime, which is quite a scary phenomenon when you start looking at it as a group of people who are around you and who you're connected with. In the last 18 months, I've personally supported 5 women to walk away from domestic abuse or violence. Women of all ages, from 21 to 71. And when you start thinking about a woman of 71 actually finally being able to walk away, you're talking to a woman who has possibly been living with domestic violence for as many as 50 years. Women with and without children who've left with just 2 carrier bags or what they could carry or get into the taxi. There's been no mechanism for us to find accommodation, keep them safe, have access to legal support. How can you keep someone away from you if you don't have any access to legal support? There's been no support available to keep families in schools and networks to support them, to have the courage, strength, and means to stay away from abusive partners. It isn't just about escaping, it's about having the support so that people don't feel it's actually better to go back because what they step into is so awful, it's better to go back. Through sharing and community support, a further 2 families have come forward in the last fortnight. Mums who need to walk away. We're supporting, but our options are limited, with no support available in North Norfolk. And although we welcome the domestic abuse bill, it's still not robust enough. And the new police crime and sentencing bill does not treat violence against women seriously enough. So it's vital, despite the new resources which are potentially going to become available, NNDC needs to understand what is needed to enable both men and women to end the cycle of violence, which is becoming increasingly common. NNDC need to identify where there are gaps and weaknesses for those living in North Norfolk. We need to be prepared to focus on ensuring appropriate services and support is in place. We need to look how NNDC and the communities can raise awareness, educate people and support people. The effect of domestic abuse and domestic violence is lifelong. The cost is beyond measure on people's lives. We can play an important role here. We should play an important role, and we must represent those who are hidden and vulnerable in our society. I therefore commend this motion to you.
Thank you, Councillor Withington. Do I have anybody else? Oh, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, just seen your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I did try and get in before Councillor Withington. Yes, so this is a hugely important problem that we have, and I too and my fellow members went on the social prescribing course, and we have 2 full-time and 2 part-time prescribers. My main concern really is that we should really be looking to increase our numbers on social prescribers and maybe looking towards NHS contracts, which are currently some district councils currently have contracts with the NHS, and I think this is a route that we should really be going forward to try and get more prescribers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Withington, do you want to have the final word? Or are you happy?
No, that's fine. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we're voting on the 3 items. In May 2021, NNDC will establish a forum, all staff and members to be offered some training, and domestic abuse champions, and 1 officer and 1 member. So those are the 3 items that we are voting on. Now, it's been requested that we have a recorded vote, so over to you, Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, I'll call out your names alphabetically in turn, and if you could just indicate whether you're voting for, against or abstaining. So starting with Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Birch.
For.
Councillor Blathwaite.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Cushing.
For.
So I missed out. Councillor Pierre Butikofer.
For.
Councillor Dixon.
For.
Councillor Fitch-Tillett.
For.
Councillor T. Fitzpatrick.
For.
Councillor V. Fitzpatrick.
For.
Councillor Fredericks. For. Councillor Gay.
For.
Councillor Grove-Jones.
For.
Councillor Hayman.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Heinrich.
For.
Councillor Housden.
For.
Councillor Kershaw.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Mancini-Boyle.
For.
Councillor Pearce.
For.
Councillor Penfold.
For.
Councillor Perry-Warnes.
For.
Councillor Rest.
For.
Councillor Seward.
For.
Councillor Shires.
For.
Councillor Stenton.
For.
Councillor Stockton.
For.
Councillor Toy.
For.
Councillor Varley.
For.
Councillor Withington.
For.
And Councillor Yassimi.
4.
And that is unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I think that sends a very strong message that we are united in opposing this abhorrent situation. It's an abhorrent crime to abuse people domestically or indeed in any circumstances. So thank you very much indeed for that. It takes us to item 18, exclusion of press and public. There is no reason to so do. And private business, I have none. So at 7:45 p.m, 1945, I declare the meeting closed, and I look forward to seeing everybody at hopefully an AGM at the end of May.
Thank you, Chair.
So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chair.